Hello and welcome. Today is going to be probably kind of a quick episode. I'm pretty much jamming this in between a whole bunch of other stuff, and just got to find time to keep doing these things. I do kind of have a habit, I guess. I don't know if habit's the right word. I tend to always try to do more than is humanly possible. But that way I end up doing a lot of cool things. So it works out for me. But I actually don't even have notes for the show today. But what I was going to do is tell you a bit about my home roasting endeavor. So this is this is what I'm drinking right now. This is one of the video projects I'm working on at the moment. And I've recorded most of the cleaning of the Breville Barista Touch. That's going to be another long video. Um, we'll see how it actually comes out. I spent a number of hours recording a number of different segments for it. Um, Cleaning the machine is actually, it's got a lot of built-in features for that, and cleaning it and maintaining it is just as easy as using it. But I also found that the instructions were extremely lacking in that you have no idea what to expect until you go through it once. So I think it'll still be interesting to see all those processes. I ended up figuring out that I don't really need to do anything other than follow the cleaning that's in that. Anyways, I'm kind of getting off track. This is what happens when I don't have notes. But so that video is coming, and then the other one I'm working on is about this roaster. Ah! This is the Ikawa at-home roaster, which I might have talked about on here. You might have seen me post it on the Instagram, but it's this is a coffee roaster, and then you can roast your own coffee at home. I mean, there are a lot of different like at-home roasters. This one of the reasons I went with this one, and why I'm doing a video on this one, is because I live in an apartment, and roasting coffee tends to produce a lot of smoke. I can actually roast in my apartment with that without worrying about the smoke. It's a really efficiently designed machine. They also have some other really nice features about it. So the way the interface and the control works is you actually control it through an app on your phone, which, since I'm not recording this on my phone, I can actually show that to you. So you control it through an app on your phone, and you control the input air temperature and the time is basically what you have control over. And I'm going to pull up the coffee that I have here, actually. So if this isn't showing up on the camera, I'll superimpose. But what you get is this graph which you can adjust. And you can change temperature and time throughout the period of the roasting. And that's pretty fun. But when you get the roaster, it also comes with a bunch of coffees that have profiles made for them already. So when you open the box, you get the roaster for the first time, you can plug it in, put in a coffee, turn on the thing, and then roast a good coffee like right out of the gate. And that's pretty cool. As much as I love coffee, roasting isn't exactly my game. It's been really fun with this roaster, and for the purposes of like exploration, really getting to know that process of coffee is pretty interesting. As a like the consumer side of me, like the side of me that just wants to drink delicious coffee and enjoy it and explore coffee that way, I don't really have a huge interest in roasting. I'd rather just go to the people who roast the coffee really well already. But there's definitely a fascinating side to the whole roasting the coffee yourself, because it brings a whole new dynamic to your experience. So the coffee that I'm drinking today is actually from Conduit Coffee. It's I bought the green coffee from Jesse. It's Guatemala Los Dos Socios, and we recorded an episode on this for the podcast this past weekend. That should come out this week, but after this video probably. And what I did is I roasted it up, and here's the rest of what I got for that. And we compared it to Jesse's roast and talked about the process and just the experience of home roasting and all that kind of thing. Quite fun. And it's really interesting because, and we say this on the show, but like, I was actually quite pleased with this. When compared side by side with his roast, all of the things that are not great about this are completely apparent. One of the things that we determined, or that I've learned, is that the speed at which, or the time at which it takes to get the beans to the temperature is going to have a critical impact. So, like, my next step in playing around with this roast, and I'm going to do all this before putting the video together on the roaster, but my next step is going to be to make the roast last longer so that it takes a bit longer for the beans to get up to temperature. Because what we found is that his roasts carried a lot more natural sweetness and smoothness and richness. And these are kind of like, well, they have like the appleiness, and you can like taste the origin characteristics. They have this kind of dry, almost champagne-like quality to them, and not as much sweetness as what Jesse was doing. Although, it's like, they smell really good. Smells really good. I would attribute that to the roast is good enough and the quality of the coffee is superb. Anyhow, that's it's been my experience with the home roasting. I'm going to be doing a whole video on that roaster. It's a really fascinating experience. There are a lot of ways to get into home roasting, and a lot of reasons to do it. One of the reasons that I've seen a lot of people talk to me about, in terms of them getting into home roasting, is economical. And I can say for certain that, especially when you're getting into it, you're not going to be saving money by roasting your own coffee. Yeah, you can buy the green coffee at the cost per pound. But if you care about really getting the best taste out of that coffee, then you're going to spend a fair amount of time and energy and money trying to figure out how to do the roasting, and then you're going to get into the tweaking of it. That's where I find myself now in terms of like the whole process is, after this roast, even though I enjoyed the taste, I want to tweak it some more. And now, of course, we did the comparison with Jesse's version of the coffee, which I like much better, and I want to try to mimic that some more, so I'm going to do some more tweaks. And then it seems like that's what it's going to be, is every time I fire up the roaster, I'm taking it as an opportunity to try to tweak the roasting a bit, which is its own sort of level of enjoyment. But that in itself is kind of interesting to me, because my natural inclination isn't to get excited and constantly break out the roaster. Like, I look forward every day to brewing a really great cup of coffee and taking the time and getting into that sort of space of going through that process, making the coffee. And while I've enjoyed the roasting process, I have to deliberately set aside time to do that and get into that. So it's not my natural space. But it is pretty intriguing. So some of the other ways you can roast, and I have roasted coffee before. This isn't the first time I roasted coffee myself. But the way I roasted it before was in a pan on the stove, which, if you're interested in roasting coffee at all, I recommend trying that, just so you can have the experience. But the way you probably want to do that is to go to like a thrift store and find a steel pan, just a cheap like metal pan, nothing with a coating on it or anything like that. Um, you're probably going to end up charring beans to it. You're going to have it on heat. Basically, what you do is you put the beans in the pan, stick it on the heat, and then you're constantly shaking the pan around to keep the beans moving. You could also use like a wooden spoon to stir them. Another popular inexpensive method is stovetop popcorn poppers because they have an agitator in them, so you can like rotate the agitator and keep them stirring. So that's a fun way to try it out. The next level up from that, that's another thing about that process is it will produce a lot of smoke, so keep that in mind. When when I did it the first time, I did it the worst way possible. I had a heavy metal pan on an induction electric stove, which meant that the pan had to sit on the stove to heat up, and I had to pick it up and shake it and then put it back down. So I was constantly doing this for like 10 to 12 minutes. Never, never did that again. A gas range is optimal. One thing you can do is like on a grill outside with a pan. That is really effective because you get the heat and then the smoke stays outside. You don't have to worry about it. If you have some kind of accident, they're coffee beans. You can just toss them. If they fall into the grill, it doesn't matter. Okay, so the next step up from that is the sort of nerd approach, I'd say, is to use the electric popcorn air poppers. And my understanding of that is you really need the older, more almost like industrial or heavy duty popcorn air poppers. There's a particular model, which I can't remember off the top of my head. I think Sweet Maria's. So Sweet Maria is a website that sells green coffee. Really good source if you're interested in roasting coffee for yourself because you can get small batches of green coffee and then they have instructional like information on roasting and all the tools that you could possibly need. So popcorn air popper, which can be modified, people get really into that. There's a whole community. And then the next step up from that is getting different like electric home roasters. The Behmor is a popular one. That I still want to get my hands on. I can't really do that in my apartment because of the smoke. But what we'll do is I'll get my hands on one and then we'll keep it at Conduit at Jesse's Roaster. He has space there and we'll be able to play around with it. And then the Ikawa is like way up there. This is like extremely well built with a lot of automation type stuff in it. It's not an inexpensive machine, but I think it's something that is definitely worth it if you really want to get into that as a significant part of your hobby. But I'll get more into that in the actual video. I'm just rambling on at this point. I think that's good enough for me. Let me know if you have any comments or questions. Actually, let me ask you. So, on Coffee Lovers Radio, we have been doing we have a Patreon set up for the Coffee Lovers Radio. You can find that at coffeeloversradio.com. And one of the tiers is shout-outs. So you can do a custom shout-out. And it doesn't just have to be a shout-out. It can also be like a question, like ask a question. We've just been trying to incorporate more questions into the show to begin with. One of the places that we're kind of getting inspiration for this from is Anchorhead's podcast, Coffee's Done. And both Jesse and I have now been on that podcast. I'll link to both of those episodes below. But part of what they do in their show is they have a segment where they pick a random question and then everyone on the show has 5 minutes to talk about that topic. And they have, like, it's not related to coffee at all. It's just like random questions. Although some of the questions are coffee related because everyone on the show is involved in that industry in some way or another. But when I was on the show, I remember one of the questions they asked was, "Do you wash your jeans?" Another one was, "What is a reoccurring dream that you've had?" Things like this. So my question to you then is, or rather request, is to put some questions below. Any kind of questions that you would be interested in hearing, like me and Jesse talk about. I could also pass them along to the Anchorhead guys. They can include it in their list. It'd just be interesting to have some more sort of off-topic conversational questions to include. So let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.